forth the IMF a program that is workable. And some comments they've been making with regards to what they have put forward. Talks about plan. But what are your own expectations now that we understand IMF will be looking at our debt?
Yeah, first of all, I think that we ought to underscore and understand why we are here. Because if you have an ailment and you do not appreciate the root cause of that ailment, no matter how you deal with it, you might falter.
Okay.
So the critical question all of us ought to ask is that, why are we where we are?
Okay.
Today, inflation is at about 34%. The CD, which used to exchange at about 6 CD at the beginning of the year, is now about 10.5. That is scary. Today, government itself, when it goes to borrow, is paying about 28%. And that's supposed to be what you call the risk-free rate.
Okay.
So what it means is that businesses or individuals will be borrowing at around 40%. So this is the situation. Our debt official is about 400 billion. So we ask ourselves, why are we here? Then we determine what we can do.
Okay.
The first reason, in my opinion, is a falsification and massaging of the economic figures by the Ministry of Finance.
Falsification and massaging?
Yes. Why do I say so? You and I know, and we are getting evidence now, that the IMF has now insisted that the Sino-Hydro facility should be part of our national debt.
Okay.
That the energy bond should be part of our national debt, that the Gov'T fund amount should be part of our national debt, that the cocoa sector, cocoa board over 14 billion should be part of our national debt. When all this is added to the national debt, it means that we'll be hitting about 100% of debt to GDP ratio. That is scary and that is monumental.
When you add the institutional debts?
Just these four, not the others. There are so many other debts that has not crystallized.
Cocoa board has 14 billion.
About 14 billion.
Ghana cedis.
Ghana cedis.
How?
They have spent so much. They accuse the NDC. When they came, they are performing worse. So it's a major issue that we ought to be dealing with. When all these are added, it pushes our national debt to about 100% of GDP. And not just that. The critical question is that how are we servicing all these obligations? If you look at the summary of financial data from the Ministry of Finance, and the Ministry of Finance has published it on their website, everybody can check. Between January to June, that is the first 2 quarters, our total revenues amounted to about 30 billion. Now you go and look at the expenditure side. What was the expenditure? Debt servicing and compensation alone, just these two, amounted to 42 billion. That is 140% of our revenues. Before we even begin to talk about health insurance, Gov'T fund, district assembly common fund, statutory payments, goods and services, the total revenue envelope cannot even meet these two items for the first quarter, 2 quarters, that is January to June. So it's serious.
Over 140, we need over 140% of our total
revenue. Our total revenue in order to meet two expenditure line items: debt servicing and compensation. So that should tell you we are in real trouble.
And now we are heading towards what you're saying, 100% in terms of debt to GDP.
And that is serious.
Is that sustainable?
It is not sustainable. It is not sustainable. And that is why we urgently need this IMF program. Okay. So government must rationalize expenditure. For me, that is the most important thing. Reduce expenditure and then improve the revenue collection. If they don't do that and they continue with this wishy-washy approach, we are going to have major problems.
Rationalize expenditure,
improve revenue collection. And how do you rationalize expenditure? Government must lead the way. Look at most of our SOEs. Some of them have 3 deputies in those SOEs. What are they doing?
3 deputy CEOs.
3 deputy CEOs. NPA. When I was a minister, we didn't have any deputy. Today we have 2. NPA alone, and several of them. Look at things like GIADEC, GISDEC. So many amorphous bodies that they have created, and yet they are just a drain on the national affairs. And also honesty and integrity. This deliberate attempt to blame President Mahama for all their woes will not help us. This government has not even admitted that it got even one policy wrong. Not even one. Look at NAPCO. They've decided they'll cancel it after all this period. And yet, every day the fixation is on Mahama. We are talking of Ukraine-Russian war. And that it has impacted us. Everybody knows that the most impacted area has to do with the energy sector, the Ukraine-Russian war, because of the sanctions in particular. In fact, it's not just the war, it's the sanctions that has led to this crunch. Now look at Ghana's situation from January to June. Taxes on oil, we've received 127% over and above what we budgeted for. Royalties, we've received 133% over and above what we budgeted for. Financial sector levy, 138% over and above what we budgeted for. COVID levy, 170% above what we budgeted for. Petroleum revenues, 150% over and above what we budgeted for.
So those are the gains we are making.
These are the gains we've made.
Because of the conflict and
because of the sanctions and its impact on oil. We are making huge windfalls. The negative side has to do with the fact that fuel prices in terms of finished products are going up in the international market. But government is not subsidizing. Government has decided that the full pass-through effect should hit the consumer.
Honorable, would that be possible if you are just talking about the debt envelope and how much it takes to service that debt? If you're a government in this kind of position, you will not be thinking about subsidies, would you?
Yes, so don't come and tell us that you are not making gains because of the Russia-Ukraine war. And I'm just giving the figures. And I'm saying the downside, which will be that because crude oil prices are going up, finished products will go up, we are paying fully. Government is not taking any brunt. Government is not taking any shock in terms of crude oil finished products in the country. If government has decided that, look, I would absorb the differential, then government will say, well, I'm taking a hit. But government has taken a decision that you and I, we should pay the full amount. And so you're paying about 50 to 60 cedi for a gallon of fuel. So this fixation on Ukraine, Russia, is a non-starter. The real problem is that government has borrowed so much, but spent very little on capital expenditure. And so when you borrow so much, and you spend in the economy on goods and service, on non-productive areas, you would see a rise in the GDP, because our GDP is basically measured as a function of consumption, investment, government expenditure, and the difference between your export and your imports. This four basically determines, and we adopt the expenditure approach instead of the product or income approach. So as you spend, your GDP will grow, but your debt will also grow. But because you are not spending in the critical sectors of the economy, it won't generate the needed revenue that you need in order to service that debt. And because we are not generating that revenue, the government decided that they will keep borrowing. So whilst President Mahama and Mills together borrowed 3.7 billion of Eurobond, President Akufo-Addo has borrowed 11 billion and another 2.5 billion from Franklin Templeton, totaling almost 13 billion. And yet they did not put it in the critical sectors. So by 2019, and I'm saying 2019, a year before COVID, the cedi had started depreciating. The cedi depreciated by 13%. And Dr. Bawumia tells us that, look, don't look at anything. If you want to know the health of the economy, look at the depreciation. In 2016, when they say we didn't do anything, we had half of that amount. The cedi depreciation was about half of what the cedi depreciated in 2019. The debt to GDP had climbed to about 67%. The manufacturing sector was declining. Most of the critical sectors were declining in 2019. So what COVID only came to do was to nail it, to reveal and expose the weak fundamentals of the economy. For the economy was being sustained on the steroids of borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. But eventually, we're caught up and there's nothing we could do. It's just like you borrowing one person to pay the other, borrow that. You would borrow round and round and round till you can no longer borrow for anybody. And then you are exposed. And see the mess that we find ourselves. Today, the Ghanaian economy is in tatters. It's in shambles. To an extent that we are talking of debt restructuring. We've never had this discussion. Debt restructuring.
On debt restructuring.
Yes. When we talk of debt restructuring, what it simply means is that you cannot pay your debt. So you are telling your creditors to either reduce the principal, reduce the interest, delay payments, or push the maturity forward.
And this has never happened.
We've never had this kind of discussion, as far as I'm concerned. And now government is even saying that they want to do that with the domestic market. They are not interested in the foreign market, the domestic market. You know what these banks do? What the banks do is that they mobilize excess liquidity, or what you call surplus capital, and give it to a deficit area. So you maybe have some small money, I go and put it in the bank. The Bank of Ghana then says that keep only 10%, which is the reserve requirement. The rest of it, advance it in the form of credit or loans. So what government is claiming as domestic bonds or whatever, these are me and you, our monies. So when government tells the banks that, look, I cannot pay, reduce the amount. What the banks then have to come and tell us, we the citizens, is that your money is with us. Maybe you have 1,000 cedi in the bank. We'll reduce it to 900. Do you know what will happen? I'll say, please, you give me my 900. It will be a run on the banks.
Okay.
And no bank in Ghana, I've seen the stress test of all our domestic banks. No domestic bank. Already they've even collapsed most of the indigenous banks.
Okay.
And that is why you need to support your indigenous banks. But they've collapsed them. With 25 billion when they could have done that with 9 billion. When there's a run, this economy will crash.
And do you suspect that's what will happen if the banks are asked to agree to debt restructuring arrangement?
They have no option unless you then tell shareholders that cut down on your equity. Shareholders cannot. A lot of the monies you see, if you look at the debt to equity ratio, a lot of them are our monies. That's what banks do. Banks mobilize excess or surplus funds in the system and give it to government or any other entity as loans. So if you say you can't pay them, and I go to tell the bank that, look, I need my money, forgetting that when I do savings and I give like 1,000, I probably also expect some interest on it. The banks cannot pay me, and they can't pay ordinary customers. So I'm telling you, my brother, mark my words. In this budget cycle that we are going to have, when the finance minister appears in November with the 2023 budget, you are going to see very, very difficult moments for the people of Ghana in terms of paying taxes, in terms of hardship, and in terms of difficulty.
But okay, so the IMF is in town and we understand a debt sustainability analysis will be done. What do you think will be the outcome of that analysis? Because you seem to suggest already that that analysis wouldn't look good for us. The debt is unsustainable.
Every rational person who understands basic economics or finance will know that it won't be sustainable. Because the IMF, their main principal objective is the financial order in terms of debt sustainability. So they would investigate the books and all the things that this minister has been hiding and deciding that they won't put it on the national debt. In the spirit of prudence, because prudence is a financial concept, they have to bring all that. Because a lot of the debt has already crystallized. For instance, Sinohydro, we don't have any alumina to pay. Meanwhile, it's almost due. So you have to factor that in. When they factor that in, then the IMF will ask government, okay, this is your debt. is how much you are supposed to pay. How are you going to deal with that?
So the question still goes back to government.
Exactly.
Government has to have a plan as to how to deal with all these issues.
Government has to have a plan and present it to the IMF. That, for instance, in 2023, we expect to pay 50 billion for debt service. How are you going to raise the money? Are you going to increase taxes? Are you going to cut wages? What are you going to? You must tell the IMF. And then you tell the IMF, I can only do maybe 80% by increasing taxes, by cutting wages. So you also support me with the 20%. That is where the IMF bailout then comes in. So you must meet their conditionalities first. If you cannot meet their conditionalities and make your debt sustainable, the IMF will not give you even $1.
You are a member of two key committees in Parliament, Finance, Energy. Have you seen the plan that we are taking to the IMF?
I have seen something. I'm telling you, the taxes they are proposing and the cuts they are proposing is steep, but some are not even attainable. They claim they will get some money from property rates and all those places. They don't look at, they are just not attainable. So government itself must be disciplined. If government is disciplined and the president stops this luxury lifestyle and begins to show prudence and begins to show austere lifestyle, at least all of us will understand and meet him halfway. But if government cannot even be honest, if government keeps peddling this falsehood about so-called capacity payments, falsehood about all kinds of things, it's not going to work. Look, they started by imposing a COVID levy. They imposed financial sector levy. They imposed energy sector recovery levy. They imposed pollution levy. They imposed e-levy. They increased salaries by only 4%. The following year, they increased it by only 7%. They've done everything under this earth.
So where is it failing? Is it the part of cutting expenditure? That's where the problem is.
Cutting expenditure is one. But even where you are not cutting, you have to spend in the productive sectors of the economy,
Okay.
so that you can generate revenue. If all you are doing is spending on goods and services, spending on consumption, you will see immediate benefits. But 3-4 years down the lane, it will catch up with you. That's where we are.
But question is, there are those who look at the figures and have suggested that government cannot avoid a restructuring. They definitely have to do a restructuring of some form. That the debt has to be restructured. That is the only way out. You said that will be painful.
Very painful. And that's why we are saying that don't restructure with only the domestic side. If you are restructuring, restructure with everybody, including foreign denominated debt. Why they don't want to do the foreign denominated debt? When they do that, they can no longer go there to borrow.
And that's where some people are suggesting that this whole IMF arrangement is so government will look good, so that they go back to the same market and start doing what they've been doing. Oh, do you suspect that's what they are planning to do?
But it will come with some painful decisions. Eventually, you might be able to go to the market. But don't forget, when you restructure and you are going back to the market, there's a signaling effect. Let's assume I borrowed money from you. In 2 years, I told you that I can't pay everything, reduce it. Next time I'm coming for money from you, wouldn't you be hesitant?
Yeah.
It will increase our cost of borrowing. So look, these guys have put us in a mess never witnessed in the history of this country. And it worries me when I see people from their side think that this is just a minor thing. The enormity and the veracity of this problem we are facing, it will take so many years before we recover. And the future NDC government would really have to think outside the box and come up with very prudent, pragmatic, sustainable measures in order to ensure that they put us on a sustainable path again. Because we are derailed. We are completely derailed. No economy in Africa is going through what Ghana is going through. No economy. Just mention one country. Even the war-torn countries. If you look at the economic indicators and their prospects, it's far better than Ghana. And Nkrumah's Ghana, is that where we want to be? With these so-called economic gurus. It's so embarrassing.
What happens if government do not make these hard decisions? Because already we are paying over the top for basic goods and services. What happens if government continues this lukewarm attitude, no serious cuts to expenditure, they are not treating the debt issue? What will happen to
what it will mean is that your currency will be devalued. Your currency will be valueless, like Zimbabwe. So it means that when you receive your salary, you can't buy anything meaningful. That's the bottom line. I can go to other bets to reduce it to a layman's understanding. What it means is that your currency would plummet so low so that when they bring goods from outside, instead of say today's 10 cedi to buy say 1 pen, you might require say 200 cedi to buy 1 pen. And so your currency will be valueless. And then we'll move into what you call dollarization. And already we are seeing it. If you go to so many places, they tell you that, wait, let me check and calculate. And they give you the cedi equivalent. So that's where we'll be heading to. And nobody will take us serious.
Then there's the matter of the Fitch downgrade. I am guessing you have read Fitch's latest report. What do you make of it?
It's a true reflection of the current situation. Because their downgrade is simply your ability or potential to pay. And I've just shown you that your total revenue cannot pay compensation and debt servicing. So why would you be downgraded? I mean, you've gone for your salary. Your salary is, say, 5,000. Meanwhile, within the month, you bought certain things on credit. You went to Auntie Mansa and said, well, give me a bag of rice. When I get my salary, I'll pay you. You went to Auntie Maggie and said, oh, kindly give me some 2,000 to pay my children's school fees. When the month ends and I get my money. Month ending, when you put all that together, the people you are supposed to pay 7,000 cedi. Meanwhile, your salary is say 5,000. Won't you be downgraded? You'll be downgraded. I mean, it's you see, these things we hear in finance with all kinds of jargons. I always want to bring it to everyday life. It's just everyday life at the micro level that we've elevated to the macro level. It's as straightforward and simple as that. So we will be downgraded, and if we continue like this, eventually they will write us off. They won't even assess us again because you are worthless. I mean, you are valueless, and that's where we are headed for.
Two issues with that discussion. Sino Hydro. I heard Dr. Baumia commissioning a road. He says, you said they couldn't have done those developments. You said it was impossible. Now the problem is that you do not read. What was your issue with the Sino Hydro?
See, once again, anyway, I don't want to be abusive. But normally, if somebody has a PhD in economics, you expect that you have a fair appreciation of the issue. Everybody knows that what we said was that, look, this facility, to all intents and purposes, is a loan. And then let's capture it as part of our national debt. So we prepare and make contingency arrangements for them. That's all we said. That was the debate in Parliament, and the records are there.
So the issue was over the fact that
the
we
treatment,
should consider it a proper debt.
Yes.
And start planning for
Dr. Baumia said we don't know what we're talking about, and that in 3 years they would process our bauxite into alumina and process the alumina into aluminium finished products, sell it, establish an escrow account. The monies that were accruing in the escrow account, they used it to service the debt. That's what they told us. And I'm saying for the past 2018, 19, 20, 21, 2022, not even one block has been laid to set up a factory to process our bauxite. And in that agreement, there's a clause that says that in the event that on maturity, when the payment is due, and our aluminium factory is not available, the government of Ghana will pay from its own resource. Now it's due.
We do
we have an aluminium factory? Do we have an aluminium factory?
So your fears.
And then Dr. Baumia decides that he will set his own questions. Very flawed, baseless questions, and decide to move on that. When we can't even pay our debt, your main interest is to go and mock the minority or your opposition. When we have been vindicated, we met the IMF at the Finance Committee and we raised these issues and they appreciate the facts. Because these are real issues. Look, we have to pay for that debt.
It's due now.
It's due. Next year is due. By the end of this year, we have to start paying. How are you going to pay for that? With what? GSDEC appeared before the Mines and Energy Committee. And they told us that the only way an aluminium factory can be established is if they buy power at 3.7 cents per kilowatt hour. Meanwhile, the gas that you require, this government is selling it for 6.08. Not the whole value chain, the gas, just the gas. 1 MMBTU is 6.08. So you see the deception, and you see why we are in this mess. And you say, I'm not surprised that we are where we are. I'm not, because this government has decided that they won't be honest, they won't face reality, they won't plan against the future. Let's just look at how we can borrow our way around and win elections. So look at where we find ourselves. Inflation at 34%. 34%. What it means is that if you used to buy something at 100 cedi, today you buy it at 134 cedi. And I always want to bring it down to our local. That's all. If you have 100 cedi, what you could buy yesterday, today if you want to buy the same thing, you need to get 34 cedi extra. Where are you going to get that money? And instead of you, head of the economic management team, sit and find solutions to the economic problems, you are engaged in this comical, they say we can't do it. Who said you can't do it? To borrow and build road, who cannot do that? Who cannot do that? Did we not build Terminal 3? Did we not build Atuabo Gas? Did we not build cycle interchange? Did we not build a bank hospital? Did we not build Tamale Hospital? Tamale Airport, did we not start it? That is prudence. It's so unfortunate. And this man wants to be president. So you can imagine, if Ghanaians make a mistake, invoke Dr. Bawumia as president, the current conditions will be worse.
And I also realize you've also been addressing this issue of excess capacity charges and the fact that they seek to blame the former administration for it. If the suggestion is that you are saying it is not because of the power plants we put in place, then where do you suspect the concerns of the World Bank president is coming from?
Thank you very much, my brother. Let me deal with this issue head on, and I'll plead with your listeners to pay particular attention to this.
Okay.
This is what the World Bank country director said, and I want to quote him verbatim. The problem is that there are also spillovers from the energy sector. For instance, no, let me quote it again. The problem is that there are also spillovers from other sectors. For instance, the energy sector. There are about $1 billion going to the energy sector because of losses. He was specific.
Losses.
That we are making so much payments in the energy sector because of losses. Now, what are the losses? Losses are not necessarily capacity charges or excess capacity. ECG on record, and I challenge them, I'll give you the evidence here from ECG, not from me. When they buy power, they are unable to account for 30% of the power they buy. During our time, it was around 20%. And so we decided I want to reduce that 20% to a single digit. That's what brought about the ECG concession, the private sector participation. And when they came in, the losses were coming down. Today, the losses are 30%. So if you pay for 30% loss, is that excess capacity? I mean, it only takes somebody who doesn't understand basic energy economics. The World Bank country director was specific. He never mentioned excess capacity. He never mentioned Mahama. He never mentioned energy agreements. He never even talked about agreements, let alone extend it to excess capacity. He said there are losses. And losses means that you bought something, you've gone to sell it. You cannot account for what you bought for. Is that not it? That's when we say you made a loss. And I'm giving you the evidence. And I'm saying that in January, ECG needed only 6 cedis in order to pay for $1 of energy they buy. Today they need 10.5 cedis. And when I did the computation, the losses alone attributable to the forex or exchange is about $280 million.
So the foreign exchange matter also comes in.
That is the losses. So if you pay for that, is that excess capacity? Now they say excess capacity with gas. Check from the available records. The ENI supply, which is what they were referring to, the contractual volume is 170 million scarf. Today they are supplying 210. Supply. Not that they are sitting and saying the gas available. We say we can't take the gas we pay. They are supplying through the pipelines to the power plants. 210. Government is not able to ensure that ECG pays for that gas. So Ministry of Finance has to go and pay ENI for that gas supplied. Is that excess capacity? This same World Bank, they provided the guarantee for the OCTV field through MEGA. MEGA is the Multilateral Insurance Guarantee Agency of the World Bank. IFC took a stake in the OCTV field as an international financial corporation of the World Bank. So if this World Bank country director is aware that that same World Bank is the entity that gave the guarantee for the project, will he come and say that it was a bad project? He didn't even say that. It's a deliberate misrepresentation by these MPP elements who think that the Ghanaian is so gullible. So let's go and say that the World Bank has vindicated. Vindicated you for what? Dr. Bawumia says we pay 17 billion in excess capacity. He was specific. We've challenged him and his office. Provide the evidence. As we speak, they can't even provide a shred of evidence. And so I'm putting it on record that the World Bank country director never said that. And I'm also putting on record that Ghana has not paid any 17 billion for excess capacity. When the minister appeared before the finance committee, I insisted with our ranking member that he should bring the details of this so-called capacity payments. He brought only 900 million. 900 million, not even up to 1 billion. For the whole of the 4 years. And you know what was in the 900 million? Payment for fuel to Litasco, payment for fuel to ANI, payment for fuel to Stratcom. If you pay for fuel, is that excess capacity? No wonder we're in this mess. And we wouldn't allow Dr. Bawumia and the MPP to misinform, misrepresent information to the people of Ghana, and unnecessarily, unjustifiably attack the image of President Mahama. If not for anything, President Mahama's energy sector levies has given this government almost 25 billion cedis. This government promised that on assumption of office, they will scrap the energy sector levies. Not only have they maintained it, they've increased it by 30%. Not only have they maintained the energy sector levies, they've come up with a new levy called Energy Sector Recovery Levy. A completely new levy, which is also giving them money. Today, because of this so-called OCTV field that you are criticizing Mahama for, you are expecting $1.5 billion from oil revenues. For the past 6 years, the Akufo-Addo-led government has not added even 1 barrel of discoveries to our oil resources. And our oil resources beginning to deplete. That is the record of President Mahama. What is the record of Akufo-Addo in the energy sector? What is their record? They should tell us what record. Petroleum, downstream, upstream. They should tell us. President Mahama built a Atuabo gas processing plant. A plant that resulted in savings, import substitution, of over $300 million per annum. A plant that today supplies 50% of our LPG gas. And they couldn't even maintain it. They're going to do a very shoddy arrangement. That's what we're going to handle today. This government cannot be trusted. Look at Ameri. We're chastised over Ameri. Eventually, they tried to swindle us of 800 million. Today they are taking the American plan to Kumasi. And they themselves confess that to give us 31 million every year. $31 million every year. The American plan. That's what it's going to do for the next 20 years. And we are not going to pay a dime to anybody again as far as the capital recovery of America is concerned. Car power, they accused us. I'm putting it on record. They've increased the tenure of car power, the agreement. They've extended it by 10 years with a take or pay clause. AXA, they've decided to extend it by 5 more years with a take or pay clause. West African Gas, they came and cancelled it. Waggle. It's resulted in a judgment debt. I don't know if you're aware.
Oh.
A judgment debt we are paying. Immediately they cancelled it. They went and signed another gas with LNG with a take or pay clause in it. This government has lost it. I say I'm very grateful to you people. At least you're one of the few media houses that is giving us that limited space to also tell our story. It does appear that our major disadvantage is that the MPP seem to have a lot of leeway when it comes to the media space. And so I'm very grateful to you for this time you are giving us. And I know you will continue to do a balanced reporting so that the people of Ghana can also listen to the other side apart from government.
I know you are headed for a committee meeting. It's on against our
Yes.
What issues would you be putting to them? What
a
are
lot
the
of issues. I've been doing a lot of analysis. I have a 243-page document
on Genside
that I had to read yesterday. I'll share it with you. I've a lot of issues. I want to see the capital budgeting analysis. They came by the capital structure, net present value, the valuation, the future projections, PURC's involvement, Energy Commission's involvement, Ghana Gas's involvement, the underlying assumptions, the gas volumes, and all those things. We want to do a very detailed job. And let me put on record, those who think we are targeting Genza, I'm not targeting Genza. I'm for private sector participation. We just want to ensure that we deal with this matter to its logical conclusion. We are bringing GMPC today. I've told Chairman that we need Ghana Gas as well. We'll talk to PURC. They've quoted some letters. We can't trace them. We want them to make all those documents available. And we'll get to the bottom of this.
It will be a comprehensive,
a very comprehensive, detailed investigation.
I'm guessing you're wondering what is happening in our mining sector, especially with illegal mining. There are those who suggest that if we can at least take control of our gold, we would have solved significantly part of our problems.
Absolutely. I agree with you. In fact, if you look at the records, our cocoa production has declined from 1 billion now to about 680. That is serious. From 1 million metric tons. Instead of the 1 million metric tons, we are now doing 680,000. You can see the difference in terms of the drop, and it's largely attributable to the illegal mining. And the only way we can resolve this problem of illegal mining is when the president takes a decisive decision that the states should go after their own people who are involved in illegal mining. Go to Samnaboy, Samatex. I have been dealing with them. They are complaining bitterly that political bigwigs, party apparatchiks and party bigwigs are engaged in deforestation as a result of illegal mining. So when you target the smaller ones, and you, the president, you cannot go after your own party bigwigs, you would not succeed in ensuring that you deal with this serious problem of illegal mining.
Because right now, the biggest thing we are discussing is Ashawan. You are saying that is just surface of the issue?
It tells you how deep-rooted and how complicit this government is. I traveled recently. When I got to the airport, they told me to take off my spectacles, and they put a machine on my eye. I asked the immigration officer, what were you doing? He says they were taking, is it the iris or is it pupil, something of the eye.
Yeah.
And there is a biometric feature. Once it takes that feature, all your records are displayed. Sure. So let's assume that this Aisha one went and changed her name. Did she change her eyes too? Because that's a standard protocol practice at the airport. You can change your name, change everything. As for your biometric features, you can change them. So this cock and bull story that she went and changed her name and came with a different passport. is neither here nor there. The president, he is the one who voted for. He promised us that he will put his job on the line when it comes to the fight against galamsey. He should lead that. And in leading that, he should deal with his own people. When he does that, it will send a signaling effect. Then all of us can support him to deal with this galamsey menace.
Thereby a radio invasion. Listeners take a decision. For so I won't mean justify our inclusion. Anti-committee attention. Yempe confusion. Among for sanction and kindly non-hibernation.